Dame absolutely rolls Navy 42-3. The Sam Hartman era has begun. Welcome everybody to Sunship Sports, and welcome to Blue and Gold Till I'm Dead and Cold. So Sam Hartman was dropping dimes in that game that I've seen very few Notre Dame quarterbacks do in the last several years. So I'm pretty pumped for what comes next. Now, I get it. It was just Navy, so we've got to temper that. But if you remember last year's game against Navy, Navy almost came back and won that game. Notre Dame put a foot on the throat early in this game. Navy had no answer. Notre Dame held Navy to 171 total yards while racking up 444 of their own. So we're going to go over the schedule in this episode. We're going to talk a little bit about that Notre Dame-Navy game starting out here, but we are going to give our opinions on the different teams that Notre Dame faces this year. Look, folks, I think Notre Dame, we all know if you've followed them for a certain amount of time, we have a nasty habit of playing up to the level of our competition. We can't do that anymore. And to be fair, we looked a lot better this first game of the season against Navy. They played with a killer instinct. It was refreshing to see. Now, I would say there's three tiers to Notre Dame's schedule this year. You've got the teams you should not have a problem with. Don't take them lightly, because we've been known to do that and get beat by those teams, but the teams that you should not have a problem with. Then your second tier is going to be what I call the next 25. They may not be teams in the top 25, but I think this group of teams would be in the second 25, which means they're all bowl teams. They're all going to have winning records, but I would say they're in the quote-unquote second top 25, and some of them right there at the top of that. So if they be somewhere between 25 and 35 nationally. Then the last tier, the Blue Bloods. Notre Dame's got three of them this year. Clemson, USC, and Ohio State. Not only are they in the top 25, all three of them are in the top 10. So we're going to have to do some stuff this year to make sure, number one, we don't take anybody lightly. Number two, that we are going to have to get up for those middle tier teams. And then number three, we're really going to have to get up to beat the Blue Bloods. I don't think Notre Dame's going to have a problem getting up to beat the Blue Bloods. It's just following through and actually winning those games. I think Notre Dame is going to come into those games really pumped. I had my concerns with this Navy game. I actually did. But Marcus Freeman looks to have turned a page. I listened to his press conference, and he talked about how he benched running back one. He benched Audric Estime. Yeah, you put the ball on the ground, man. You fumbled the ball. You're not playing the rest of the half. And Audric Estime took it like a man. He's like, no, you're right. I did. Luckily, we're five deep in the running back room, so that wasn't a problem. But let's get right to it. That Navy game, what a game for the Fighting Irish. 444 total yards, 253 passing yards, almost 200 rushing yards. Sam Hartman, as I said earlier, is as advertised. 4 touchdowns with a 97.9 QBR and a passer rating of 231.7. That is a game. Now, Notre Dame has some storied quarterbacks in its past, but not in its recent past. I mean, obviously, the Joe Montanas, Joe Theismann, Brady Quinn, Rick Meyer, then probably Jimmy Clausen, Brady Quinn. Is Sam Hartman going to be able to etch his name in that Notre Dame lore as one of our top signal callers? Well, I tell you what, if that Navy game is any indication, he found 9 different receivers. I was a little bit irritated that Tobias Merriweather wasn't one of those 9. Now, he missed Merriweather with that long pass into the end zone. He underthrew him and it allowed the defender to break it up. But Merriweather didn't get any more targets that game, and he's supposed to be kind of our nuclear option this year in the receiving corps. So I wasn't real thrilled that, except for that one missed attempt, that Merriweather didn't get another look. But he found 9 other people that did. He made some throws that only a few QBs can make That first touchdown pass to Jaden Thomas, there's a guy in Southern Cal and a guy in North Carolina that could probably make that pass, but I don't know of too many other guys that could have made that pass. He shows poise, he shows moxie. He's 42 years old. No, I'm kidding. He's 24 years old. He's a sixth-year senior, but it is kind of funny how these quarterbacks seem to look older and older in the NCAA. True freshman, Jaden Greathouse, going to be a monster for Notre Dame. Just going to be a monster. Matter of fact, we're going to have a new segment on Blue and Gold Till I'm Dead and Cold, and that new segment is the Blue Light Special. There you go. There you go. Blue Light Special time. Jaden Greathouse is going to lead the Irish this year as a true freshman in both yards and touchdowns. That's right. He's going to outpace Jaden Thomas. Jaden Greathouse, I saw him in the spring game. I was there. He was easily the favorite target of Sam Hartman. Jaden Greathouse is an unbelievable athlete. He doesn't necessarily have the speed that Tobias Merriweather has, but he just has the instincts. He's always open. He muscles himself for that ball. He's a great route runner, and I think he's going to lead the Irish this year in receptions. Anyway, let's move on. 5 deep in the running back room. You heard me talk about Audric Estime. Audric Estime may have fumbled, but dude's just a beast. He's going to be a handful for anybody that we face this year. The O-line is massive and elite. I still want to see a little bit more out of the guards. The starting guards of Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan. They played well, but if we're going to beat those Blue Bloods, I'm going to need to see more out of them. Riley Mills and Jordan Botello, they're going to have big years this year. Both of them had some really nice plays against Navy, and they're going to be living in the backfield of opposing defenses all year long. I really liked what the linebackers did. I had my questions on Maris Leofau. He didn't play up to expectations last year. I know that he's always nursing some kind of injury, but Leofau, Kaiser, and Bertrand all played extremely well. They were flying all over the field and were making plays. A secondary didn't get tested because Navy doesn't pass the ball. I mean, they passed it a couple of times, but the secondary really didn't get tested, so we don't know what to think. But they were coming up and making tackles. I will give them that. And as I mentioned earlier, the defense only gave up 171 yards. And I don't care what anybody says, that triple option is not fun to play against. Huge improvement this year versus last year's Navy game. What I will say is I enjoyed the killer instinct that Notre Dame showed. Like I said, they got in there and ended it early. And like I said, I like what I saw from Marcus Freeman and the coaching staff. I especially liked what I saw in the press conference when he said, hey, I took Audric out of the game. You put the ball on the ground. That's kind of been a little bit of a knock, if there is one, on Marcus Freeman, that he might be too buddy-buddy with the players sometimes. But he said in that press conference, nobody's bigger than the standard. Nobody. He doesn't care if your name is Audric Estime, Sam Hartman. No one's bigger than the standard. So who do we got next week? Tennessee State. There's not a ton of information on Tennessee State. We know that they're projected to be 5th in their own FCS conference. They're not a North Dakota State. FCS has some really good schools like North Dakota State. They're not a North Dakota State. So I don't expect the game to be very competitive, but it will be interesting. They're an HBCU, so it's going to be a fun time. Probably have a neat halftime show. And former Pro Bowler in the NFL, Eddie George, is their head coach. So there might be some excitement there, but I don't expect that to be too difficult of a game. So right now we're talking about those teams that should not have Notre Dame should not have a problem with. That's the third tier of teams. Another team I would throw in there is Central Michigan. They're probably bottom 30 in all of college football. Their offense really struggled last year, and that's with Lou Nichols who was the Mid-American Conference Offensive Player of the Year, and he's a Packer now. So they don't even have him anymore. They got a QB battle going on. I think their offense is going to be a mess this year. That's could be just me, but I don't expect much out of Central Michigan's offense. The defense is solid for a Mid-American Conference defense. Defensive tackles Jacques Bristol and Roby Stewart, they're all conference guys in the MAC. We'll see how they can stand up against the running game of Notre Dame. Lots of returning starters and some experienced guys on the defensive side of the ball, but another team that Notre Dame should not struggle with. The talent gap is just huge. The last team on there is a team that jumped up and bit us last year, Stanford. Stanford's got a new coach, Troy Taylor. And he did a great job for Sacramento State. Troy Taylor was 30-8 at Sacramento State, which is why he got the job at Stanford. But Stanford lost some people, including their premier quarterback, Tanner McKee, who's now in the NFL. Running back E.J. Smith returns, and tight end Benjamin Urasek. He's another one of their good weapons, which is nice for Stanford because Troy Taylor's offense is a tight end heavy offense, so he'll be used quite a bit. Stanford's D, atrocious is the only word that I can think of, which is strange for Stanford football teams. They averaged giving up 32.2 points a game last year, so we'll have to see what that translates into this year. Their sophomore edge rusher, David Bailey. He's an up-and-comer. He's going to have to stand out this year. And the Florida International transfer, Gathan Bernadelle, he's a 100 tackle guy. So, but apart from those two guys, Stanford's defense is going to struggle again this year. Next would be what I would call the Tier 2 teams. Say that fast 3 times. Tier 2 teams. The next 25. Not the top 25. The next 25. Teams that are ranked 26 through 50 in the NCAA, in the FBS. Notre Dame needs to show up and play hard against these teams. These are teams that maybe don't have quite as many 4-star or even 5-star athletes that Notre Dame has, but they have some. And these teams have guys that are going to be in the NFL, and a lot of them. So Notre Dame is going to have to show up to play. First one I'm going to talk about on this list, Wake Forest. And we're going to cover these teams in ascending order. So Wake Forest would probably be more towards the bottom of that second 25. They've got a subpar offensive line from last year, and they even have more pieces to replace this year. Of course, the biggest news is that they lost Sam Hartman to Notre Dame. Mitch Griffiths is solid, but he's not a Sam Hartman. They also lost A.T. Perry to the NFL. They're going to pass the ball a lot, though, because that's just that offense. I think Mitch Griffiths is going to have a lot of yards this year. They still have a lot of weapons at wide receiver. Nobody as well known as Perry, but they're going to put some points on the board. Where they struggle as well, just like Stanford, 13th ranked defense in the ACC last year. They've got to have some of those parts from last year that are returning. They're going to have to perform. The defensive line is shaky. Linebackers decent, led by a North Carolina A&T transfer, Jacob Roberts. The secondary, adequate with guys like Kalen Carson and Chillian Garnes, but they're going to struggle on defense against their own conference. I think Sam Hartman's going to light them up. Next team, talk about Duke. I think they're better than Wake Forest. They have Mr. Everything Riley Leonard at quarterback. 700 yards rushing, 3,000 yards passing last year. Riley Leonard is an excellent football player, and if you don't account for him, he'll take you to school. His favorite target is fifth-year senior wide receiver Jalen Calhoun. Calhoun has been doing it well now for Duke for a while, and he's going to be his favorite target. Running back Jordan Waters returns to take some pressure off of Riley. You don't want your quarterback to be your leading rusher. That's never a good sign. You tend to get those running quarterbacks hurt if they do it too often. So they're going to be depending on Jordan Waters quite a bit this year. 3 of 5 starters return on an O-line that led the ACC in sacks allowed. So it's a good offensive line, especially for an offense that is going to want to pass a certain amount. Head coach Mike Elko, who used to be defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, he's cleaned up the defense there. Secondary is loaded with preseason all ACC safeties. Jalen Stinson and Brandon Johnson, they're going to be outstanding this year. Cornerback Chandler Rivers is He's going to be a playmaker. He's an excellent cornerback. I don't care what school you're talking about. And cornerback transfer portal help has arrived from both Miami Hurricanes and Texas A&M. So Duke went out and got some people to bolster an already very good secondary. The D-line is stout behind preseason everything defensive tackle Dwayne Carter. So Duke's defense is very good, I would say, and their offense is more than adequate to give teams a hard time. In my second top 25, or the next 25, as I have called it, Duke would rank somewhere around maybe 15th, something like that. Now, quite frankly, we're getting close to the top 10 of that next 25. All three of these teams, I think, are in the top 10 of the next 25. First one I'm going to talk about is North Carolina State. We have to go and play them on the road. So that one is going to be a little bit touch and go. Getting both offensive coordinator Robert Anae and quarterback Brennan Armstrong from Virginia was huge. Virginia had the third best offense in college football last year. Unfortunately, North Carolina State lost most of the playmakers that they had from last year's team. So they're going to have to find somebody to get that ball to. Offensive line has questions too. Graduate transfer, Dawson Jaramillo, that they got from Oregon, I believe, is out for the year now, injured and out for the year. So he was a huge transfer that was supposed to help them solidify that offensive line, and now he's not playing this year, so that's going to hurt. Their running game was pretty putrid last year. It only averaged 3.4 yards per play. Again, that's why they brought in both the offensive coordinator and the starting quarterback from Virginia to try to make some plays. Defense has been the heart and soul of North Carolina State for a while now, and it's going to continue this year. They're going to be led by playmaker Peyton Wilson at linebacker. He basically does everything for them. He lives in the backfield. He can rove. Peyton Wilson is an outstanding football player that Notre Dame is going to have to account for on that field on every single play. The secondary has one of the ACC's best duos with Shyheim Battle and Aiden White. Those guys are going to make it difficult for Notre Dame receivers. So Sam Hartman is going to have to find those guys, and those guys are going to have to figure out ways to get open because those are two of the ACC's best. Next team on this list, Louisville. New coach and alum Jeff Brom. He's been all over Purdue, other teams. Top 25 recruiting class and impact transfers that he's brought in. So right off the bat, Jeff Brom landed Louisville. Even though I wouldn't put them in the top 25 this year, their recruiting class is in the top 25. As well as I said, bringing in some people. High-flying passing attack is what Jeff Brom has always been about. Wide receiver is the strength of this team. They brought in senior transfer Jack Plummer. He's got a strong arm. He's good. He's not great. But for what Louisville wants to do, I think Jack Plummer's going to do a good job for him. Their most elite weapon is the Georgia State transfer that they got, Jamari Thrash. He's got elite speed. If you blink, he's gone. You've missed him. He's in the end zone. 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. They also have multiple other transfers at wide receiver. It's a bit of a disappointing offensive line. Although they do return the best center in the ACC, Brian Hudson, they do have some other pieces that they have to replace. They returned 2 of their starters and grabbed 2 new starters in the transfer portal, but these guys are going to have to be playing together for the first time. So hopefully Jeff Brom can fix the offensive line woes that they had. They were supposed to have one of the best offensive lines in the ACC last year. It just didn't pan out that way. Okay. The biggest hurt for Louisville is they lost their tight end, Marshawn Ford. Marshawn Ford was an outstanding tight end. He's not back. Tight end is a very important piece in a Jeff Brom offense. It just is. It's been used at every level. Wherever Jeff Brom has been at, tight end has been a focal piece. So they're going to have to find somebody to do that. The defense, on the other hand, led the nation in sacks. Now, they did lose a lot of pieces, but I still think that the defense is going to be good. Although the defensive scheme is changing. They were a 3-4 defense last year. They're changing to a 4-2-5. The strength of the D is 7-sack guy Ashton Gillette. He's an outstanding pass rusher. Linebackers, probably the weakness. Lost a ton of depth. Brought over Keith Brown from Oregon to help at least get a real solid tackler in that linebacking core, but there's not a lot of depth there. Brownlee, Riley, and UNC transfer Storm Duck, they form a top defensive back trio. The secondary is going to be very good. If there is a weakness, it's probably safety. They have lost MJ Griffin for the year, so that does hurt because MJ Griffin is definitely an excellent safety. There's some question marks at the safety position. I think Benjamin Perry looks extremely aggressive at the star position, that hybrid safety linebacker role that almost every team has now. Benjamin Perry looks like he could be an absolute stud at that position, especially in coverage. All right. Last but not least, before we get to the Blue Bloods, we're going to talk about Pitt. And one of the most interesting things about Pitt is Phil Jurkovec. He is, as most of you know, a former Notre Dame quarterback that then went to Boston College and now is with Pitt. He's definitely going to help out that passing game. Solid running back room, led by their power back, Rodney Hammond Jr. Bub Means is an obvious deep threat, and they've got a couple of really nice true freshmen that are gonna see the field right off the bat. Loaded and experienced on the offensive line. They've got 4 seniors coming back, so that is going to be a very good offensive line. Notre Dame is going to have to get after them early and often. Otherwise, Phil Jurkovec is more than capable of making some nice throws and hurting you down the field. Dominant D-line, as always. Pitt always has NFL players on their defensive line. They've got 3 athletic seniors this year that could give Notre Dame fits if that offensive line doesn't come to play. Solid and experienced at corner as well. Safety is a question, but I think Javon McIntyre is a budding playmaker. So Pitt is probably the best. Not by a whole lot. I definitely like Louisville and NC State. Notre Dame's going to have to come to play, especially against those 3 teams. Pitt, Louisville, and NC State, they could jump up and bite Notre Dame, especially because a lot of these games are in between their blue blood games. You know, they'll play Ohio State, and then it'll be a couple of weeks until they get USC. And in between there, you've got some of those aforementioned good teams, and those are those trap games because those teams have more than enough talent to beat you if you don't wake up and play. All right, let's get to what everybody wants to talk about, Blue Bloods. So Clemson preseason ranked 9th, USC preseason ranked 6th, Ohio State preseason ranked 3rd. We'll start with Clemson. Now, Clemson has a new offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley. He's the brother of head coach of USC, Lincoln Riley. So obviously you can imagine a little bit of what this offense may look like. Cade Klubnik, he's talented, but kind of pick a lane. Which one are you? We saw him in a couple of games last year. One game he played outstanding. The other game you don't want to write home about. So he's going to have to show some improvement, especially with a new offense. He's got a brand new offensive coordinator in there. He's going to have to catch on quick. The O-line for a blue blood team, it has lots of question marks. It looks better than it has in years past, but of course they haven't played anybody yet. But the O-line could be a question mark. The wide receivers are very, very talented, but they have to stay healthy. Antonio Williams could be an instant impact player, but we've got to keep these guys on the field, or if you're a Notre Dame fan, keep them off the field. But they have a very talented wide receiver room. Running back, Will Shipley, he's their best offensive player. Will Shipley won the Paul Hornung Award for the most versatile player in the FBS last year. He can run, he can catch, he returns kicks and punts. He even threw a couple of passes last year. So if you sleep on Will Shipley, he's going to beat you. Clemson's defense, it's missing Brent Venables. That's the only thing I can say. They're still deadly, but they definitely need the playmakers on that side of the ball to stay healthy. They may have one of the best defensive lines in college football when Xavier Thomas and the rest of those players are on the field. It's chocked full of NFL talent, but again, you don't know until you see them on the field because health really matters, and last year they struggled. It wasn't a Clemson defense that you expected to see. Now, that could mean good things for Notre Dame. One of the reasons is because out of the 3 blue blood games, Notre Dame has to go to Clemson. So that one's on the road, and that's going to be later in the year. So we are going to have to see what Notre Dame looks like against a team that is also having national aspirations. Next team that I want to talk about is the USC Trojans. First of all, they've got the best player in college football. We can argue that all day long, but you're going to lose because Caleb Williams, he's the probable Heisman. He's the probable first pick in the draft. He looks like Patrick Mahomes. I know. I said it. Somebody had to say it. Patrick Mahomes is iconic now, but he does. If you watch him move, you watch him throw, you watch the weird angles he can whip that ball in there from, he does. He reminds you kind of a younger Patrick Mahomes, which is strange to say because Pat Mahomes is still young. He just seems like he's been around forever because the dude keeps winning Super Bowls. But Caleb Williams is looking to win a Heisman and a national championship. So the offense isn't what USC fans have to worry about, though. It's the defense. They just gave up almost 30 points to San Jose State, a group of 5 team, with a total transfer front 7. Like they brought all these guys in from other teams. Solomon Byrd has been there for a year, but he even transferred over from Wyoming. They need him to become a force. If USC is going to compete on the national level against the 4, 5, 6 other teams that they want to compete with to get to that college football playoff, Solomon Byrd is going to have to show up this year. Freshman speedster, wide receiver, Zachariah Branch. This 5-star, this kid, he had a sick game against San Jose State. He's just absolutely lethal. He is going to, just like I said, Jaden Greathouse is going to lead Notre Dame this year. I think Zachariah Branch has every opportunity of leading USC this year as a true freshman wide receiver. He just, as a freshman, he looked like men playing with boys. He's just that good. And he's got Caleb Williams throwing him the ball. So that combination is not going to be fun to play defense against. It's definitely going to test Benjamin Morrison in that secondary that we have. They've got a freshman linebacker that Caleb Williams himself really likes, calls him the Destroyer, kid by the name of Tackett Curtis. He's going to get a shot because USC's got a bunch of injuries in the linebacking core. So Curtis is going to get his shot. So we'll see what that looks like. If Notre Dame is going to get by USC, it's going to be because Sam Hartman is just going to be able to pick this defense apart. If San Jose State dropped almost 30 on them, then Notre Dame needs to drop 45 on them. Okay. Toughest team on our schedule. Me personally, I don't even think it's close. Ohio State. Barely lost to Georgia, would have trampled TCU. I don't care what Michigan fans say or anything. If you look at that team and how well they played against Georgia, they had every opportunity to beat Georgia in that game. They just didn't. And then Georgia went on to win its second national title. I think Ohio State would have stomped TCU as well. Along with Georgia and Bama, those are the 3 teams that are just always more talented than yours. They just are. If you go to any of the recruiting websites and you just look at the top 100, it's, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State. You're like, wow, they get everybody in the top 100 apparently. So Ohio State has more talent than Notre Dame has. They just do. Notre Dame is going to have to play well. The game is at Notre Dame. So our crowd is going to have to be in it and not give their tickets away or sell their tickets to the opposing team's fans, please. I don't want to see a lot of red and gray, except for the people who actually drove from Ohio State and bought the tickets ahead of time. Ryan Day, people, he's not Urban Meyer. Ryan Day's got 6 total losses at Ohio State. 6. And they're all against blue blood elite programs. And most of them are very close games. You know why Ryan Day is getting a bunch of crap? He's lost to Michigan 2 years in a row. Doesn't matter if you went to the college football playoff, you lost to Michigan. So that right there, I don't say puts him on the hot seat, but he needs to beat Michigan. And Honestly, I think this is the team this year that probably will. Although Michigan is super hyped this year as well. So I'm not sure, but Ohio State, in my personal opinion, has as much, if not more talent than anybody in college football. Maybe even including Alabama and Georgia. There's a quarterback battle going on between McCord and Brown. Doesn't matter, though. They're both have NFL pedigrees. It's, pick your poison. Wide receivers Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, and Julian Fleming, along with tight end Cade Stover. Folks, that's an NFL lineup. It is. If all four of those guys get drafted next year and end up on the same team, that will be a really good skill position set for whatever NFL team gets. Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson, they're also NFL running backs. Both of them. Outstanding tailbacks, different types of backs, but if you don't account for them, game over. Game over. The O-line is loaded every year with NFL first rounders. I mean, seemingly every draft, there's some O-lineman from Ohio State getting called out in the first round, just like Notre Dame. Ohio State's got good offensive linemen. So find a different weakness, folks. It ain't offense. It ain't offense. Ohio State is going to score points against anybody, including the Irish. Notre Dame is going to need to beat them with the other side of the ball. They're just going to have to, sounds dumb to say this, they're going to have to score more points because I think that game could turn into a shootout real quick. 13th ranked defense with a lot of returnees. So Ohio State doesn't have bad defense either. 13th ranked defense in the country last year. Secondary is uber talented. The one thing that they struggled in is they struggled to get turnovers. So when you struggle to get turnovers against the good QBs, you're going to lose some of those big games. And it burned them in a couple of those games. They just couldn't turn the ball over. Denzel Burke, he's probably the best out of the group. He's going to be an NFLer. He's that good. The linebackers, Tommy Eichenberg, who was first in tackles on the team, and Steele Chambers, who was second in tackles on the team, are both back, both studs. And then, of course, your edge rushers. JTT matched up with Jack Sawyer on the ends. Those are going to be really difficult players to account for. I'm going to love to see that battle because who do we have? We have Joe Alt and Blake Fisher. So seeing Joe Alt and Blake Fisher block JTT and Jack Sawyer, that's going to be the tale of that game. If Joe Alt and Blake Fisher win that matchup, I think Notre Dame wins that game. If Sam Hartman can stay clean, I think Notre Dame has a real shot of winning that game because it's in South Bend. So Notre Dame with this schedule, could they run the table? Sure. Is every game on this schedule winnable? Sure. If I was Irish homer, I'd probably say 10-2 because I think they're going to beat at least one of the three blue bloods. And then probably in my estimation, that's probably going to be Clemson. I think they have a really good shot against USC. Ohio State's going to be the tough one. If they beat Ohio State, then I'm going to go out and say Notre Dame's going undefeated. Because if they can knock off the Buckeyes, then Notre Dame is definitely going to have the inside track of getting to the college football playoff. So, thanks again, folks. We will see you Wednesday for our next episode of Blue and Gold, Till I'm Dead and Cold. Until then, go Irish, and we will see you next time.